unauthorized persons to exit the chamber. Chair recognizes the distinguished senator from Chickamauga.
Mr. President, it's a dreary, glooming day outside, but it's a great day inside the Senate chambers. The men and women here are working hard for the people of Georgia. Day in history, in 1974, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, or Atlanta Constitution back then, an editor was kidnapped for ransom. That was a sad day. And a moment in history here, the senator from Ocilla, as a little kid, was plucking a chicken and decided to be a farmer soon after that. The journal's been read and found to be correct.
The senator has almost left the chair speechless. Is there objection to dispensing with the reading of the journal? Hearing none, the reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills and resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the Secretary's desk at this time. Mr. Secretary, first reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 125 by Senator C. of the 34th, a bill with title enactment Title 30 of the OCGA relating to handicapped persons so as to provide for the installation and maintenance of adult changing stations in certain commercial public facilities for persons with disabilities.
Health and Human Services.
Senate Bill 126 by Senators Karen Check of the 48th and others, a bill with title enactment Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to the imposition rate computation exemption from
Finance.
Senate Bill 127 by Senators Hufstetler of the 52nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Article 1 of Chapter 9 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to motor fuel tax so as to require electronic filing of certain reports.
Finance.
Senate Bill 128 by Senator Hufstetler of the 52nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Article 5 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the OCGA relating to current income tax payments so as to provide that each
Finance.
Senate Bill 129 by Senator Hufstetler of the 52nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Title 47 of the OCGA relating to retirement and pension so as to provide that an election to participate in the regions. Senate Bill 130 by Senator Stone of the 23rd, a bill will be titled an act to provide for that future elections for the office of probate judge of Johnson County, who also serves as chief magistrate of the magistrate court.
State and local government.
Senate Bill 131 by Senator Jones of the 25th and others, a bill will be titled enactment Title 6 of the OCGA relating to aviation so as to create the Georgia Major Airport Authority to amend Article 1 of Chapter 15 to Title 45 of the OCGA to general provisions relative
Transportation.
Senate Bill 132 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill will be titled enactment Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance to provide for modernization and updates to amend various provisions of the
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 133 by Senator Harbin of the 16th and others, a bill will be titled enactment Title 33 of the OCGA relating to insurance so as to provide for modernization and updates to amend various provisions of the OCGA.
Insurance and labor.
Senate Bill 134 by Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Article 8 of Chapter 12 of Title 50 of the OCGA relating to the Georgia Commission on the Holocaust so as to reassign the Commission for administrative
Urban
purposes.
Affairs.
Senate Resolution 202 by Senator Hufstetler of the 52nd and others, a resolution creating the Joint Study Committee on Evaluating and Simplifying Physician Oversight of Med-Level Providers and for other purposes.
Rules.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions, please.
House Bill 158 by Reverend Silcox of the 52nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Article 7, Chapter 4, Title 49 of the OCGA, relating to medical assistance generally, so as to provide that Medicaid recipients have the same access to
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 192 by Reverend Powell of the 32nd and others, a bill will be titled enactment Chapter 39A of Title 43 of the OCGA, relating to real estate appraisers, so as to change certain provisions relating to real estate management companies to revise and provide for definitions.
Regulated industries.
Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Secretary will now read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Special Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 32 to pass by substitute, sent by Senator Jordan of the 6th. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation instructing the board to send back to the Senate for recommendation. Pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.10b, the Committee on Rules has referred the following legislation from the general calendar. Senate Bill 18 to the Committee on Rules. Rules referred Senate Bill 18 to the Rules Standing Committee, sent by Senator Moss of the 53rd. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation instructing the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 106 to pass, sent by Senator Watson of the 1st. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had under consideration the following legislation instructing the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 99 to pass, sent by Senator Harper of the 7th.
Y'all got better seats.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation instructing the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 2 passed by substitute, sent by Senator Cowser of the 46th. And Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had and considered the following legislation instructing the board the same back to the Senate for recommendation. Senate Bill 93 do pass. Senate Bill 111 do pass. Sent by Senator Kirk of the 13th. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The Secretary will now read bills and resolutions for the second time.
Senate Bill 67 by Senator Burke of the 11th and others. Capital outlay funds, eligibility for regular funding, advanced funding for educational facilities destroyed by fire or other natural disaster provide. House Bill 30 by Representative Ralston the 7th and others. Supplemental appropriations, state fiscal year July 1st, 2018 to June 30th, 2019. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
It's now time for the morning roll call. Are there any motions to excuse? Are there any motions to excuse? Secretary will call the roll of senators. Signify your presence by voting the yea switch. The Secretary will unlock the machine. It's now time for our morning devotional. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. Doorkeepers, please secure the doors. I'd like to recognize the senator from the 33rd to lead us in our pledge and to introduce our chaplain of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let's all stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now the Georgia flag. I pledge allegiance to the Georgia flag and to the principles for which it stands, wisdom, justice, moderation. Thank you, Mr. President, my fellow senators, colleagues, friends, and you all. Today I have the great opportunity of introducing to you the Reverend Dr. Tarway Bright, a man after God's own heart and an ordained elder in the African Methodist Episcopal Church. Dr. Bright exudes a vibrant and thoughtful presence as he diligently works as the newly appointed senior pastor of Turner Chapel AME of Marietta, Georgia. Reverend Bright is a proud native of Liberia, West Africa, is the son of the Reverend Cannon Bright and Mrs. Bright, Alethea Bright. Dr. Bright is married to the beautiful Mrs. Retta Williams Bright, and they are blessed to have 2 children, Tarway Bright Jr. and Toretta Bright. Dr. Bright formerly served as the executive pastor under the tutelage of the late Reverend Dr. Kenneth E. Marcus, Sr., pastor of Turner Chapel AME Church in Marietta, Georgia, from 2003 to 2018. After the passing of Dr. Kenneth Marcus, Dr. Bright was appointed to serve as the interim pastor from January 2018 to June of 2018. On June 2018, Dr. Bright received the official appointment from Bishop Reginald T. Jackson, the presiding prelate of the 6th Episcopal District of the AME Church, as senior pastor of Turner Chapel AME Church in Marietta. Anointed by God, Dr. Bright preached messages of hope and healing during the outbreak of the Civil War in Monrovia in April of 1996. His words were prophetic and greatly needed during those times of great hopelessness and frustration. He became known as an outspoken pastor preaching about social issues in spite of threats to his life, very life. As a result of his integrity and faith, Dr. Bright was awarded the Clergyman of the Year. Pastor Bright continues to allow the Lord to use him to preach anointed messages of hope, healing, and restoration to God's people. He is a passionate worshiper, and his favorite verse is found in Psalms 27:4. One thing I ask from the Lord, this only do I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple. Pastor Bright is an avid runner and enjoys reading, playing golf, dancing, and playing hymns. Before I had my knee surgery, we used to both run together in the Peachtree Road Race every year. Now I walk and he runs. Whenever I see Pastor Bright, I always think about, you never know where Jesus may show up. He's an avid golfer, and so am I. I remember a few times playing and hitting the ball errant, and I took my club, I got ready to say God. Then I looked at him and I said, God praise all things. I remember one time I was standing in the supermarket, and I had a loaf of bread and a bottle of wine, and it wasn't First Sunday. And I looked over my shoulder and I saw Pastor Bright, and I said, you never know when Jesus is going to show up. He has a favorite saying that people wear many masks, and when he says it, he has a tendency to look at me, but he said, through God's grace, we are all forgiven. I welcome you, my pastor, Dr. Bright.
Thank you, Dr. Red. Good morning, Mr. Lieutenant Governor and members of the distinguished Georgia Senate. I'm glad to be here this morning to share in the morning devotion. I bring you greetings from my Episcopal leadership, Bishop Reginald T. Jackson and his wife, Episcopal Supervisor Christy Davis Jackson, Esquire, my wife Rita and my daughter Tarita, son Tyree Jr., who are unable to be here with me today, but I came with my beloved daughter Tarita, and I'm here with the staff of Turner Chapel, the African Methodist Episcopal Church, co-pastor, the Reverend Dr. Cassandra Marcus, and there's great folks who work there, and I praise God for each one of you for being here this morning. 21 years ago, I came to school. I came to the Interdenominational Theological Center at the Turner Seminary, AU campus, and I would pass this building. Little did I know, 21 years fast forward, I will be standing here as chaplain of today. I say to God be the glory. I'll speak to you this morning on a topic, you can make a difference. I strongly believe it is not by chance or accident you have been elected to represent the great people of Georgia. God has each one of you exactly where God wants you to be. Because of this, God has deposited something in you to make a difference. In 2 Timothy 1:7, Paul writes, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear, but that of power, love, and a sound mind. Fear will stop you from being productive. Fear will take away your ability to make a difference. Fear quenches the fire to be all God has called you to be. In order to overcome fear, God has to be the one ordering your steps. The Bible encourages us that when we draw closer to God, God will draw closer to us. When God draws closer to us, we can walk and understand that truly God has given each one of us power, love, and a sound mind to make a difference in this world. When you are walking and operating in power, love, and a sound mind, you can make a difference with compassion for the marginalized and the oppressed. You can make a difference for racial and religious tolerance. You can make a difference for drug and violent-free communities. You can make a difference in removing human sex trafficking of our young girls. You can make a difference in making good health care affordable and accessible. You can make a difference in providing equal access to trained teachers and good schools for our communities. You can make a difference by standing up for what is just, what is right, and what is righteous. I leave you with these words from Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. It reads, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, submit to God, and he will make your path straight." I pray God will give each one of you power, love, and a sound mind to make a difference in the lives of the people of Georgia by the decisions and the votes taken in this sacred space. Let us pray. Oh God, we thank you this morning for your grace and new mercies. We declare great is your faithfulness towards us. We pray for these state senators. I pray you will endow them with power, love, and a sound mind to do your will. I pray for wisdom, knowledge, and understanding in their deliberations and the decisions they make. I pray, oh God, you will continue to allow your presence to be felt in this place. I pray you will protect them from all danger and bless the works of their hands. These and many other blessings we ask in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
At this time, the chair would like to recognize the senator from the 31st to introduce some special guests.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the Senate, I'm not sure my microphone is. The Georgia Airports Association is an extremely important and valuable resource for the state's residents, businesses, and visitors. Currently, there are 104 publicly owned airports in what we call the Georgia statewide aviation system. Of these 104 airports, 95 are general aviation facilities that serve only private and corporate aviation. Another 9 airports provide for commercial or regularly scheduled airline service in addition to serving the needs of the general aviation community. The mission of the Georgia Airports Association is to provide, develop, and expand a safe and efficient airport system to meet the future economic growth of Georgia through full implementation of the state aviation system plan. This plan recognizes that airports are an indispensable component of the state's transportation system that strongly supports the state's economy. Today in the gallery we have some of the Airport Association's board here, and I would like to recognize them. If you will, stand for us. We have Tom Strong. We have Tom Strong, the president of the association, Leonard Robinson, Robert Burr, Kevin Britton, Mike Matthews, Jason Phoenix, Jim Galloway, Kimberly Wade, Eric DeLeon, Howard Witten, and Phil Cannon. And I might add, the beautiful lady on our left up there is my wife, who is also an airport manager. So thank you for being here and what you do for Georgia.
Thank you, Senator. We now like to bring our Doctor of the Day forward and like to recognize the senator from the 39th to do so. Are there any unanimous consents? We have some special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 139 by Senator Watson of the First and others, a resolution recognizing February 20th, 2019 as Physicians' Day at the State Capitol and saluting the physicians of Georgia and for other purposes. Whereas Georgia physicians are trusted leaders who have a positive and lasting impact on the health of their patients and the health of their community as a whole. And whereas the Georgia legislature has helped foster one of the strongest practice environments in the country for both patients and physicians, whereas Georgia physicians support 10.8 jobs on average, including their own. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in recognizing February 20, 2019 as Physicians' Day at the State Capitol and saluting the physicians of Georgia. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 1st to introduce our special guest today.
Thanks so much, Mr. President. It's certainly an honor to be here, and it's an honor to introduce to be here for the Physician Capitol. Here we are. Let's see. It is the Physicians' Day at the State Capitol. Such an honor to be here. Just a few of the statistics that support the healthcare industry. There are 19,000 physicians licensed to practice medicine in the state, 88,000 direct jobs, 117,000 indirect jobs, 205,000 total jobs. A economic indicator, $29.7 billion in revenue generated by the healthcare industry, $16.6 billion of total wages benefits supported by the physician industry, $1.5 billion in local and state and tax revenue. Certainly, it is important to have quality health care in the state of Georgia. Georgia has ranked near the bottom when it comes to per capita physician to population, but we've made great strides over the past few years. Those numbers have moved up. It is important to note that physicians generally will settle in the place where they do their medical school and they do their residency. And with that, we certainly know about the great residency programs in medical school at Emory here in Atlanta and Morehouse, at MCG at Augusta University, and we have residency programs all throughout the state. Mercer University School of Medicine has done a fabulous job when it comes to educating primary care physicians throughout the state, and their numbers show that through their residencies and the number and the percentages that settle here in the state of Georgia. Augusta University Medical College of Georgia has just introduced the 3+3 program, again, aimed at primary care physicians in the state of Georgia and rural health care. So I must say I got to applaud our past administration and certainly the present administration with Governor Kemp and his support of the 3+3 program at the Medical College of Georgia and Augusta University. But having said that, with the Physicians' Day here at the Capitol, I wanted to introduce Dr. Andrew Reisman, who is here today with us, who is sponsored by or a constituent of our President Pro Tem Miller, and then Dr. Rutledge Forney is also the president of the Medical Association of Georgia, and she is here as a constituent of Senator from the, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said the name, 39th, I'm sorry, apologize for President Pro Tem there using his name, but without further ado, Dr. Rutledge Forney, thank you.
Good morning. Today you're going to see lots of doctors all over the Capitol, and it's not because you're sick. It's because you have such an impact on the health of all the Georgians in the state. We take care of patients one patient at a time, but what you do takes care of patients sometimes thousands at a time. We are here to tell you we want to be part of helping you take care of our Georgians. We are excited about the work you do. We are a resource. We look forward to talking to you today and in the future. Again, thank you for all you do to take care of all the citizens of Georgia.
We have some additional special guests with us today that we'd like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 159 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the Oglethorpe County Forestry Unit on being named the Georgia Forestry Commission 2018 North Georgia Unit of the Year and for other purposes, whereas due to the outstanding accomplishments of the Oglethorpe County Forestry Unit in the year 2018 in the areas of forest management, wildfire prevention and suppression, reforestation, community outreach and education, and for other purposes. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body recognize and commend the Oglethorpe Forestry Unit for being named 2018 North Georgia Unit of the Year, and Senate Resolution 160 by Senator Harper of the 7th and others, a resolution recognizing and commending the Worth County and Decatur Seminole County Forestry Units on being named the Georgia Forestry Commission's 2018 South Georgia Co-Units of the Year and for other purposes, was due to the outstanding accomplishments of the Worth and Decatur Seminole County Forestry Units in the year 2018 in the areas of wildfire prevention and suppression, reforestation, seed collection, community outreach and education, and for other purposes. Now, therefore, be resolved by the Senate that members of this body recognize and commend the Worth County and Decatur Seminole County Forestry Units for being named the 2018 South Georgia Co-Units of the Year. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 7th to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, today we have the honor to honor our men and women who work with our Georgia Forestry Commission, and specifically, though, to recognize our North Georgia Forestry Unit of the Year and our South Georgia Forestry Units of the Year this morning. And as many of you know, Georgia is the #1 forestry state in the nation, and the reason that we do so phenomenally well in forestry is because of the men and women that work in our forestry commission, and we appreciate the work that they do on a day-to-day basis. But these forestry units that we're recognizing this morning are honored due to their outstanding accomplishments in the areas of forest management, wildfire prevention and suppression, reforestation, community outreach, and education. And with me today, with the Oglethorpe Forestry Unit, we have Ranger Philip Davis. With the Worth County Forestry Unit, we have Ranger Tyler Harden. We also have Ranger Jim Reynolds. And with the Decatur Seminole County Forestry Unit, we have Chief Ranger Rodney Hurd. And we're glad that these gentlemen would join us today. And I'm going to ask the Director of the Georgia Forestry Commission to come up and bring a few brief comments. Director?
Chairman Harper, thank you very much. President Duncan, it's indeed a pleasure and an honor to be with you in the Senate this morning. I just want to take a moment to thank you as the Senate body for recognizing our superstars. We've got some of our management team up in the gallery. We're glad they're with us, but we really wanted to make sure that we had here in front of you this morning the folks out in the field that get the work done. It's no secret that wildfire is a big part of what we do, along with forest management and reforestation. It's probably no secret to you that since October 10, recovery work for Hurricane Michael has been front and center for us. We're not keeping a close tally, but the men and women of the Forestry Commission so far, we think, have tallied over 8,000 hours in service to the citizens of Georgia who suffered from Hurricane Michael. And indeed, it's been a pleasure to work alongside of them and to support them in what they do. My role as director is simple. That is to make sure that the men and women of the Forestry Commission have the resources they need to serve the citizens of Georgia who are your constituents. I just want to make special mention, again, we've got Chief Ranger Hurd here from the Decatur Seminole unit where the eye of Hurricane Michael was, and I will point out to you that his unit was selected as Unit of the Year for South Georgia for last fiscal year, not the work that they had put in on Hurricane Michael, so you might see him here next year. But again, Chairman Harper, thank you to the team that I have the honor of working with. Thank you, and to the Senate, thank you for your support of our agency.
We have some additional special guests with us today that we continued like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 209 by Senators Kirkpatrick of the 32nd and others, a resolution commending Grady Memorial Hospital for its commitment to improving the health of our community through its provision of the highest level of medical care and its advocacy for improving the health and quality of life for citizens of Metro Atlanta and Georgia through injury and violence prevention and for other purposes. Whereas Grady Memorial Hospital is Metro Atlanta's only American College of Surgeons verified Level 1 trauma center, is Georgia's busiest trauma center, and is recognized nationally and internationally for its expert trauma care. Whereas Grady's commitment to saving lives reaches beyond the hospital, as evidenced by the launch of its new violence intervention program, Pivot Atlanta, the program to interrupt violence through outreach and treatment. Whereas Pivot Atlanta focuses on preventing repeat gunshot victimization and retaliatory violence through wraparound social services, community policing, and data sharing. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body commend Grady Memorial Hospital for its work to reduce gun violence, provide care and services to the victims of violence, and make the Atlanta community a healthier and safer place to live, and commend the Atlanta Police Department for its collaborative response with Grady Memorial Hospital to interrupt gun violence. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon the senator from the 32nd to introduce our special guest today.
Thank you, Mr. President. All of you know about the huge role that Grady plays in serving our community. What you may not know is that Grady also has an innovative program called Pivot, the program to interrupt violence through outreach and treatment. Grady's trauma team, led by Dr. Diane Payne, has been working together with the Atlanta Police Department in a collaborative effort to break the cycle of violence in Atlanta. This research program takes patients with gunshot wounds, evaluates their risk factors, and connects them with wraparound services as well as community policing. Early results are promising, and Grady hopes to expand the program to other types of violence. Behind me are Mr. Jim Hoppert, CEO of Grady Hospital, Lieutenant Jackie Gwynn from Atlanta Police Department, Dr. Brian Morris from Grady's Trauma, Director of Grady's Trauma Program, Jasmine Moore, Coordinator of the Pivot Program, and my friend, Orthopedic Hand Surgeon Dr. Diane Payne. Please help me welcome Dr. Payne to make a few remarks.
Thank you, Senator Kirkpatrick. It is my honor to be here today, and I thank you for the opportunity. This program could not move forward without the passionate response from the team members who have helped to make this possible. This is a true collaborative effort between the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council, the Applied Research Services, Grady Memorial Hospital, and the Atlanta Police Department. Together, we've been able to build this program that's going to affect change in terms of gun violence in the city of Atlanta and in the state of Georgia. We have a real problem with gun violence as a public health epidemic, and we need to address it through a public health approach. And that starts with leading the way at Grady and helping to take care of these patients on a daily basis. We've made a huge effort, and with sustainable funding, we can really build this program and make it work to expand it to treat more patients and treat more communities across the state of Georgia. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great job. Let's take a picture over here. We have special guests with us today that we'd continue to like to recognize. Will the Secretary read the resolution?
Senate Resolution 210 by Senator Moulds the 53rd, a resolution commending the dentists of Georgia and recognizing their day at the state capitol on February 20, 2019, and for other purposes. Whereas the dentists of the state are respected civic leaders and business owners within their communities who believe that removing barriers to dental care and educating the public on the benefits of proper oral health are critical for maintaining the overall health of Georgia's citizens. And whereas every February is designated as Children's Dental Health Month, during which members of the Georgia Dental Association provide free oral health instruction and educational activities to pre-K and school-age children throughout the state of Georgia. Now therefore be resolved by the Senate that the members of this body join in recognizing Wednesday, February 20, 2019 as Dentist Day at the state capitol, that Friday, February 22nd, 2019 is Give Kids a Smile Day in Georgia, that the entire month of February is Children's Dental Health Month in Georgia, and recognize the valuable role played by the GDA and the thousands of licensed dentists in the state who help remove barriers to dental care by volunteering their services. That concludes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? The chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. I'd like to call upon our distinguished senator from Chickamauga to introduce our special guest of the day.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we're recognizing and saluting the dentists of Georgia and celebrating their day at the Capitol. This is their day, February 20th. And I'd like to also clear up something. Many of you have asked me where the toothbrush was invented. The toothbrush was invented in Alabama because anywhere else it would have been the teeth brush. But the dentists in this state are respected civic leaders and business owners within their community who believe in removing barriers to dental care and education to the public on the benefits of proper oral health, and that is crucial for maintaining the overall oral health of our Georgia citizens. Recognizing the members of the Georgia Dental Association for their long-standing commitment and dedication to promoting the oral health of all of Georgia's citizens and protecting the safety of their patients. Georgia dentists and members of the Georgia Dental Association constantly volunteer and give free and charitable dental clinics located throughout the state, also providing free treatment in their own offices to underserved and low-income patients. Every February is designated as Children's Dental Health Month, during which members of the Georgia Dental Association provide free oral health instructions and education activities to preschool, pre-K, and children throughout Georgia. As part of the Children Dental Health Month, one day is designated as Give Kids a Smile Day. And I know the senator from the 15th does that just when he walks into the room. that was kind of funny. In 2018, that has provided over $100,000 in free donated dental services and oral education, health education to underserved and low-income children throughout Georgia. It is my pleasure to recognize Dr. Weinman with the Georgia Dental Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We'd first like to thank the Senate for recognizing the hard work of the Georgia Dental Association putting on these different programs, and especially the work of our volunteer dentists. And did want to make you aware of a couple of programs that we have that are operating throughout the state. We have one program called Donated Dental Services that is expressly for medically compromised patients and seniors, a group that has no other way to receive treatment. And we also want to make you aware that almost in every part of the state there are free clinics or reduced cost clinics that are staffed totally without pay by our volunteer dentists. And if you do have a constituent that has an issue, please don't hesitate to contact our dental association and see if you can't get them guided to the right place. Again, thank you for this recognition.
Also, we have some dentists in the audience, if they'll stand up in the balcony. And our own dentist here, Dr. Jackson, Senator Jackson, would you please give them all a hand?
At this time, do any senators wish to rise on a point of personal privilege? Chair recognizes the senator from the 55th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the Senate. As a Florida native in Daytona Beach, I grew up watching baseball icons on TV with my father and occasionally at a ballpark during spring training. Because of my love for the game, I decided to pause and choose Frank Robinson for my Black History moment. 2 weeks ago, February 7, 2019, the death of Frank Robinson was announced at the age of 83. Frank Robinson was born in Beaumont, Texas on August 31, 1935, but grew up in Oakland, California, where in high school he was captain of a state championship basketball team with Bill Russell, who would go on to be the first black manager in the NBA. Robinson broke into the National League as a 20-year-old in 1956 and tied a rookie record with 38 home runs in his first season. Over the next decade and a half, Robinson was one of the most feared hitters in the game. He was also noted as a fierce player. He spiked Johnny Logan in 1957, causing Logan to miss 6 weeks. He also got into a fist fight with Eddie Matthews in 1960. Robinson won the Triple Crown in 1966 and was the first player in Major League history to win the MVP award in both the National League and the American League. A 14-time All-Star, Robinson batted 309 times, hit 30 home runs 11 times, and led his league in slugging 4 times and runs scored 3 times. At the time of his retirement, his 586 career home runs were the 4th most in history, behind only the records of Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, and Willie Mays. He ranked 6th in total bases at 5,373, and extra base hits at 1,186. 8th in games played at 2,808, and 9th in runs scored at 1,829. In Robinson's final year as a player in 1975, he was traded by the California Angels to the Cleveland Indians, and 3 3 weeks later, the Indians named him their manager, but they persuaded him to continue playing. In his first at-bat as a player-manager for Cleveland, he hit a home run off of Doc Meddick of the Yankees. After Robinson left the field, he went on to manage the San Francisco Giants, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Montreal Expos. Later in his career, Robinson served as Major League Baseball Executive Vice President of Baseball Development with his focus on increasing African American participation in the sport. He then transitioned and served as a senior advisor to Commissioner Rob Manafort. In 2015, Robinson concluded his career as honorary president of the American League. Frank Robinson's resume in the game is without parallel. He was a trailblazer in every sense whose impact spanned generations. He was only one of the greatest players in the history of the game of baseball. But that was just the beginning of a multifaceted baseball career. Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, members, for listening to my Black History Moment. Thank you. I yield.
I'd like to take a moment to recognize a personal friend of mine and a personal friend to many in this chamber, former State Senator Fran Millar. Chair would like to call on our pro tem for a point of personal privilege.
No more Hondas? Is that what you said? Thank you, Mr. President. I really hate to follow Fran. Fran, a great friend of many folks in this chamber. We appreciate your service. And the fact that we're having the dyslexia bill is very, very important, and we appreciate your good work on it. Mr. President, I would like to recognize a group that are very important to me and very important to our economy in the state of Georgia, the Georgia Restaurant Association. Founded in 1906, the Georgia Restaurant Association was at one time part of the Georgia Hospitality and Travel Association, and in 2002, a group of restaurateurs here in Atlanta, most in Atlanta, formed the Georgia Restaurant Industry Council. And today we have Karen Brimmer, we have Phil Hickey, Pano Karastasis, Alan LeBlack, Perry McGuire, and George Macaro in the gallery. Would y'all stand so we can give you a warm Senate welcome? Please. Thank you very much for being here today. I have to point out that they represent over 500 corporate entities and 4,000 separate restaurants and 18,000 food services and drinking establishments with a $20 billion impact on our economy. Today is the 11th annual Taste of Georgia event in the depot from 5 to 7 p.m. Folks, if it's pouring cats and dogs, raining, it's worth the walk in the rain. It's a great event, and everybody looks forward to it every year. I know I have a lot of great restaurants there. My light's still green, so I'm going to make one more point. These folks in the restaurant industry teach many people their soft skills, teach them how to serve others, teach them how to be in a business environment, teach them the skills that they need to go on and be successful in life. And I know they have changed the course of many young people in our state, and we're very, very appreciative for what y'all do for our economy and what you do for our quality of life. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 54th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today because for a very special reason. Many of you know that for many years I was a state juvenile probation officer and worked with kids, and to say that kids are a passion for me would probably be an understatement to most people who know me. Well, today we at the Capitol, we were having after school day at the Capitol. And after school day at the Capitol is because the peak hours for children that are getting into trouble are 3 to 6 p.m. And about 20% of those cases that I dealt with as a juvenile probation officer came from those hours after school, immediately after school, when kids are unsupervised. So today we have a group here, and we have some in the gallery for the after school day at the Capitol, students and teachers and staff alike. So if y'all would please stand, let us recognize you and also recognize these in the chamber as well for all the services that they do and the kids themselves, and hopefully with everybody putting that behind their kids' efforts, tomorrow's going to be a brighter day. Thank you. Could we give them a round of applause?
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 48th.
Good morning, everybody. Recently, in fact, just on Valentine's Day, the city of Johns Creek was named as Georgia's most ethnically diverse city. Johns Creek also ranks 20th in the nation on diversity of birthplace. In 2016, Johns Creek was recognized as Georgia's safest city and boasts one of the best high schools in the state. I rise today because I have the privilege of representing one of the most diverse constituencies in the state. Johns Creek is just one of the many culturally rich, multifaceted communities in Georgia's 48th district. While campaigning, I had the honor of visiting churches, mosques, synagogues, and non-religious community centers. I spoke to people from all walks of life, and I am proud of the diversity in my district as Georgia continues to become home for people of various backgrounds, ethnicities, and religious affiliations. Let's continue to celebrate the strength in our diversity. As we all know, in trying times, our different perspectives should be a collective source of knowledge, expertise, and pride. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
First, I want to thank Senator Miller for his leadership on the dyslexia bill. I want to thank him for my family, but I also believe that it'll be his legacy to the children of this state. Since last Thursday, 600 people have lost their lives to gun violence in this country. There have been 6 more mass shootings and 0 efforts by the Republican leadership in this chamber to do anything to protect the most vulnerable among us, our children. The father of a Parkland victim recently said that everyone comes up to him and they say, you know what, I can't imagine what you're going through. His response to them has been, you should. You should imagine the unimaginable. He said, imagine your daughter laughing, just beginning to live her life, being riddled by bullets. Imagine being told by a medical examiner or an ER doctor that you can't see your child because her body is too broken. Your baby girl is unidentifiable. Connecticut didn't imagine the 28 dead, mostly elementary school children. Didn't imagine that one day a teacher's job description might include shielding children with her body. Las Vegas didn't imagine 58 dead in the blink of an eye, didn't imagine the use of a bump stock that turned a normal gun into a weapon of mass destruction. And Florida didn't imagine 73 dead in 4 separate mass shootings, including shooting of multiple SunTrust bank employees and a beautiful young woman from Dunwoody, Georgia, named Maura Binkley. Imagine the unimaginable. And then explain to me why we can't take reasonable measures to keep our children and loved ones safe. Can't we all agree that if a man has been convicted of abusing his wife and children, then he might not have the self-control to own a gun? Isn't it common sense to support basic training requirements for responsible gun ownership? And who can't wait 72 hours to buy a firearm? A deer stand isn't going anywhere, y'all. I don't want to add our state to the growing list of states that could have done something and didn't, not until it was too late. Fellow senators, the voices of mothers are rising everywhere. Those voices grew louder at the ballot box this November. Their voices can be heard at the rope lines today, and they should be heard. I urge you to speak to them, your constituents, voters, motivated by the greatest power in this world, love to protect their children. Listen to their voices, hear their pleas, and then do what you were elected to do, lead. Or quite frankly, get out of the way. Because inaction is no longer an option, and if you won't protect our children by addressing gun violence, the mothers of this state will. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 53rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to talk about another issue that this chamber dealt with last year, and so far I haven't heard anything about it. I talked with animal rights through the interim and others on the other side. But Mr. President, I have a dilemma here. We'll have a traditional song that may have to be changed. Last year, the members of this body were howling about this issue. In fact, the pro tem mentioned a while ago that it was raining cats and dogs. But if we don't do something soon, we're going to have to change that time-old song. How much is that doggy in the window by Patty Page? Mr. President, we're going to have to change the song unless we drop this issue that we are not allowed to sell puppies in a pet store. How incredible is that? So let's determine now if we're going to save the song or have to change the song. How much is that doggy in the window? Mr. President, the one with the waggly tail. How much is that doggy in the window? I do hope that doggy's for sale. Now, if we don't address this issue, it's going to be this way, Mr. President. How much is that lizard in the window? The one with the spiny tail. How much is that lizard in the window? I certainly wished I had a doggy for sale. Mr. President, this issue, even how simple it sounds, is a problem issue. How can we have our children select pets in a pet store when there are none? There are no cats or any dogs. There are only lizard and fish. And it is hard to pet either one. Mr. President, I hope I've put in the minds of the men and women of this body another important issue that we need to address as soon as possible this year. I yield the way.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 50th.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, there's no way that I'm going to attempt to, this puts me in a very difficult position to try to have to follow something like that. But on another note, I would like to mention, kind of changing gears a little bit, this is Habersham County day at the Capitol. Even if you don't live in Habersham County, I know a lot of you travel through Habersham County. It's one of the most scenic parts of the state, and we have a contingent from Habersham County in the gallery. And at this time, I'd like to ask them to stand, and I'd like for us to recognize them. We're glad to have all of you with us here visiting in the Senate today. I hope you like what you see. Habersham County is a great county. It's my kind of county. Agriculture is the #1 industry and tourism's #2. But we appreciate all of you being here today, and hope that we have the opportunity to visit with you today while you're here. And I do have a resolution recognizing this as Habersham County Day at the Capitol that I'll be presenting to you a little bit later today. Thank you, Mr. President.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 12th.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. President. Today, it is my honor to welcome the Albany Area Chamber of Commerce in its recognition of Albany Daugherty Day here at the Capitol. Many of you know the struggles that we've had in Southwest Georgia these last few years. Not just Hurricane Michael, but we've had a couple of tornadoes also. To my right, I'm going to introduce to you the hardworking people that continue to revitalize Southwest Georgia, Albany, Georgia specific. I have on my right, and if you raise your hand when I call your name, Mayor Dorothy Hubbard, the chair of the legislative affairs of our chamber, Mr. Matt Reed, vice president of marketing and public relations at Phoebe Putnam Memorial Hospital, and on your desk, Ms. Jessica Castle, and on your desk you will see a copy of Phoebe Putnam's annual report. And I would also like to mention that Phoebe Putnam Memorial Hospital spends $23 million in indigent care annually. That is for those individuals that are uninsured, underinsured, no insurance. Phoebe turns nobody away. And this is an annual fee or an annual absorption that that hospital takes every year. So on your desk, please take time to read about our hospital. We also have Dr. Anthony Parker, who is president of our very, very wonderful technical college that has many, many tentacles throughout the state of Georgia, and he does an awesome job of making sure that we have a well-trained workforce in and around not only Albany, Georgia, but Southwest Georgia. I'm so appreciative of you guys for coming today. Thank you for what you do, not only for Albany, Georgia, but for Southwest Georgia. And as we continue to build and rebuild, the legislature is here to help you and help us as they have done, and we want to thank them. The governor and the lieutenant governor continue to know that there are challenges in Southwest Georgia that must be dealt with. So thank you very much for all that you do for the citizens of Southwest Georgia and Georgia also. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
Thank you, Senator. And for our final point of personal privilege, I recognize the senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today I rise to speak to, today is MS Society State Action Day. So you'll see people in the gallery and out throughout the Capitol today here to really bring awareness to multiple sclerosis. And this is something near and dear to my heart, as two women that helped raise me both were diagnosed early on with MS, and they're here with me on the floor. One is my mother, Linda Brass, and our cousin, Sally DeJarnett. And so to all the advocates out there and all of our people, fighting MS, we just thank them for what they're doing, and I ask you, fellow senators and fellow colleagues, to just please listen to them and open up your hearts and minds to them and listen to what they have to say. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the will.
You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions before you. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the resolutions on the consent calendar are adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw and commit? You have a consent calendar of local bills before you. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections filed to the bill on the local consent calendar?
Mr. President, there are no objections filed.
Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the Committee on State and Local Government Operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. The question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, are therefore passed. We are moving on to the rules calendar. The Secretary will read Senate Bill 17.
Senate Bill 17 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others, a bill entitled Enactment Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to specifically authorize telephone cooperatives and their broadband affiliates to provide broadband services, provide for definitions, to authorize certain financing and partnerships for the provision of broadband services and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 17, a bill will be titled Enactment Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to specifically authorize telephone cooperatives and their broadband affiliates to provide broadband services, provide for and revise certain definitions, to limit recovery from the Universal Access Fund under certain conditions, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
The chair recognizes the senator from the 51st to speak to Senate Bill 17.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, I present to you SB 17. This is a series of bills you'll be seeing this year, continuing the efforts that we've begun 2-3 years ago on rural broadband. SB 17 is a simple bill that allows the 4 rural telephone cooperatives to get into the broadband business, to expand broadband in their districts. Let me read those 4 companies. There's 4 telephone co-ops that are primarily in South Georgia. One is the Bullock Telephone Company, which is located in Statesboro, Georgia, and it serves the majority of Bullock County. The second one is Pineland Telephone Cooperative, located in Metter, Georgia, serves over 1,200 square miles in Candler, Emmanuel,
Johnson, Washington, and Burke counties. The third co-op is the Planners Telephone Cooperative, which is located in Newington, Georgia, which provides service in Screven and Effingham County. And the last telephone co-op would be Progressive Rural Telephone Cooperative, which is located in Rents, Georgia, which provides services in Lawrence, Dodge, Wilkinson, Bleckley, and Wheeler counties. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a simple bill. It allows these 4 co-ops to get in the broadband business. Does not allow them to use the universal access funds, but it does allow them to qualify for grants, whether it be state or federal grants. So, Mr. President, if there's no questions, I would ask for your considerable vote for this bill, and we will move the ball forward.
Doesn't appear that you have any questions.
Thank you.
Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Any senator wish to speak to the broader measure for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 48?
Senate Bill 48 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others. A bill will be titled Enactment Title 20 of the OCGA relating to education, shows to provide for identification of and support for students in pre-kindergarten through 2nd grade with dyslexia, to provide for definitions, to require the Department of Education to make a dyslexia informational handbook available to local school systems and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 48. A bill will be titled Enactment Chapter 2 of Title 20 of the OCGA relating to elementary and secondary education, to provide for identification of and support for students in kindergarten through grade 3 with characteristics of dyslexia, provide for definition, require the State Board of Education to develop policies for the identification and assistance of students with dyslexia, to require the Department of Education to make a dyslexia informational handbook, and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Martin of the 9th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Education and Youth substitute to Senate Bill 48 by striking lines 157 through 160 and inserting in lieu thereof the following. 3. Local school systems selected to participate in the pilot program shall screen all kindergarten students for characteristics of dyslexia and may screen kindergarten students for other disorders. Further, such participating local school systems shall screen students in grades 1 through 3 for characteristics of dyslexia and may screen such students for other disorders who have been identified through the response to intervention process for other purposes. Amendment 2 by Senator Tippins of the 37th and others offers the following amendment. Amend the Senate Committee on Education and Youth substitute to Senate Bill 48 by striking lines 114 through 122, inserting in lieu thereof the following. E1, beginning with 2020 through 2021 school year, local school systems shall screen all kindergarten students for characteristics of dyslexia and may screen kindergarten students for other disorders. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th to speak to Senate Bill 48.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise today to bring you SB 48. This important legislation will provide students with dyslexia a much better chance to be identified, and once identified, they will receive the tools they need to be able to better understand the way in which they process information. Studies show dyslexia affects between 10 and 20% of students at some level. Think about that. Between 10 and 20% of students in school today suffer from dyslexia in some way or another. Currently, there is no mention of dyslexia or other disorders listed in this bill in the Georgia Code, even though I believe each of us has a general understanding of what dyslexia means. Students with characteristics of dyslexia are not being identified early enough to receive the early intervention that is so important to their success. And dyslexia has nothing to do with intelligence. As we've talked about earlier, a few weeks ago, or last week in this chamber, there's some people you may have heard of that are presumed to have had dyslexia. People like Albert Einstein, Steven Spielberg, Richard Branson, Tom Cruise, a little artist named Pablo Picasso, Big Sam Allardyce, Steve Jobs, and, the Fonz, Henry Winkler. Dyslexic students don't seek pity. They seek resources and techniques so they can better succeed in school. Their parents seek a partnership with their schools as they search for ways to reach and assist their students who often struggle with homework and other assignments. During the committee process, we heard from students with dyslexia that talked about their complete frustration with their studies before their diagnosis. We also heard of students who, through memorization, were able to do very well in early elementary school. But as the middle school years hit, they began to struggle and fall behind. We heard from parents whose children went undiagnosed for years. They had to deal with tears, exasperation, defeat, and complete surrender. However, studies show that like so many other issues, dyslexia, the best medicine is early intervention. When we identify these kids early, teachers are able to work with these students to unlock their dyslexia superpower, as fourth grader Bryn testified in our committee. Once these amazing students receive the help they need, then they can fully engage with their education, and the sky is the limit. And who knows when we'll be adding another famous name to the list I mentioned earlier. So let me take a quick moment to go over what SB 48 will do. The first thing it does is define dyslexia and a number of other disorders. It requires by December 2019 that the Department of Education create a handbook to assist local boards in best practices to identify characteristics of dyslexia and methods to work with students that have these characteristics. It further requires the Department of Education to create statewide standards to screen all students in kindergarten for dyslexia. In addition, we will screen students that are having difficulty reading in grades 1 through 3 to make sure that they are receiving the appropriate intervention. These standards would include standard definitions, qualified screening tools, a process for providing parents with information and resources if their child is identified as having characteristics of dyslexia, and an option to opt out if the parents choose. The screening requirement is subject to appropriation. It will not create an unfunded mandate. The bill also tasks the Professional Standards Commission to update their professional development for current teachers so they can better identify students that show characteristics of dyslexia, and it trains them in techniques to teach these students in a way that is meaningful and effective. During the committee process, it became clear that if we tried to immediately take this statewide, we would run the risk of creating something that was too big to begin with, and it would be ineffective for the students it was meant to help and frustrating to the educators and parents that it's meant to empower. So the next section sets up a framework for at least 3 school districts to take part in a pilot program, a 2-year program, with the suggestion that one of those be urban, 1 suburban, and 1 rural. Through this pilot, we can gather data, learn best practices, collaborate with the International Dyslexia Association, and create policies that make sure the statewide rollout of the program is a success. Again, this section is subject to appropriation, and I'm working with our appropriation chair to have this funded in the budget. Through my conversations with the Department of Education, we believe and estimate the cost of this will be somewhere between $250,000 or $500,000 to fund the startup of the pilot. And finally, and probably the most influential and important part of this bill, is that we will additionally task the Professional Standards Commission to create standards for the university system in order to make sure that new teachers who are training to become teachers going forward will have the training they need to identify students that may have dyslexia and working with those students in order to give them the best tools and the best opportunity for success. This bill is not a silver bullet. Alone, it will not solve all our problems, and without working together between the legislature, Department of Education, local schools, administrators, teachers, parents, and students, we will fail. This is a team effort. Not every student that screens as positive will actually have dyslexia. And there will be others who actually will screen negative initially that may have dyslexia. But what is key is that we always are looking out for the student's best interest, and we keep that first. And when we keep students first, we all win. Now, I must say, without the work of our former colleague, Senator Fran Miller, this legislation would have never happened. And I know he's somewhere in here, right over here. Never would have happened. His leadership was indispensable in forming the study committee and the recommendations that led to this bill. And there are many advocates that are here in the gallery and that are out in the halls that really worked very hard to bring this forward. They did a marvelous job of showing us how appropriate intervention works. Now, I do want to recognize one young lady who spoke to the bill in our committee meeting. Her name is Miss Audrey Jane Leftwich. She shared her struggles with the committee, but through her testimony, she showed her victory and did a marvelous job of talking to us and showing us how appropriate intervention can unlock the future for a child. And there's just one more thing. Today is Audrey Jane's birthday. So happy birthday, Audrey Jane. I ask for your favorable consideration so that we can take this first step towards giving these children a better chance. And would you prefer to me yield for questions now or speak to the amendments? I plan on speaking to both amendments. He's working right now, so I'll speak to the amendments. Both amendments are friendly. Amendment 1 is my amendment. It actually brings the pilot program. There was some wording in the pilot program that said that we must screen every student, K through 3rd grade, during the pilot. We're going to mirror that language so it's all kindergartners and 1st through 3rd through the RTI process, which mirrors the other. The second amendment came from a senator from the 37th, and I agree with that too, and it adds language that requires students that did not attend kindergarten or they transferred in and had not yet been screened, 1st grade through 3rd grade, that they would actually, the requirement to be screened, they would be included in that requirement. So if there are any questions, I will yield. If there are not, I ask for your favorable consideration.
Senator, have you spoken to both amendments?
Yes, Mr. President.
You have a couple of questions if you yield.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th. All right, we'll move on. Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Will the gentleman yield?
I will yield, but I remind you that we're supposed to give you a hard time in the well, and I will yield.
This is a friendly question. My question about amendment number 1 is the addition of the word other disorders on line 5, and I'm wondering what other disorders are contemplated by your bill.
Thank you, Senator. That is an important question. The other disorders are listed in the bill. They are not required to be addressed by local school boards at this time. They are encouraged. We wanted to make sure that other disorders, dysgraphia, aphasia, dyscalculia, and others are mentioned because oftentimes they run hand in hand with dyslexia. And as we move down the road, there are going to be better and better tools to also give us an idea that a student may be struggling with these. But for right now, we wanted to make sure that the requirement focuses on dyslexia with the encouragement that if these other things come up, that they would be approached as well.
Will the gentleman yield further?
Yes.
My second question as to amendment number 1 is why the deletion of the requirement for urban, suburban, and rural schools is no longer delineated as part of the pilot program? Line 157 through 160.
Line 157. I don't believe that section is actually talked about in 157 through 160, Senator. I think that's up in lines 138 through 146.
Thank you for that correction. The question still stands, though. Has that been deleted from the bill?
It's not been deleted from the bill.
Okay,
No.
thank you.
Senator, do you further yield?
I will yield, yes.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the senator yield?
I will.
Isn't it true that 1 in 5 people suffer from dyslexia?
It has been between 1 in 10 and 1 in 5, I believe, is where it is. Yes, ma'am.
Will the senator further yield?
I will.
Would you agree that people with dyslexia are usually more creative and have higher levels of intelligence?
I'm sure the senator is knowledgeable of what she speaks.
And isn't it true if identified and remediated, dyslexic children go on to do amazing things?
I believe that to absolutely be true, Senator.
And will the senator further yield?
Only for the chairman of Special Judiciary.
Well, look at that. Isn't it true that dyslexia doesn't discriminate and affects children in Dodge County as much as it affects students in Fulton County or Cobb County?
I believe that to be absolutely true.
And will you yield for one further question?
One more.
Isn't it true that if we pass this bill that it'll have a profound and lasting effect on the children of this state?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Senator, you have no more questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for your favorable consideration of the amendments and then the bill.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 13th to speak to an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, there's no amendment. I just want to speak to the bill. One of my heroes in life growing up was my uncle, who's 6 years older than me. And 2 years ago this May, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And so I've spent a good bit of time going out to Texas and spending some time with him. And on one of my visits out there, we got to spend some one-on-one time. And in a conversation, he told me something that I never, ever knew. He suffered from dyslexia all his life. He talked about my grandmother's struggle, how she'd work all day at the shirt factory and then come home and stay up with him till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning to help him study his words over and over and over again because they didn't know what to do. Ricky was born in the 50s. Grandmama did the best she could, but she didn't have the tools that she needed. School was tough. I do remember him changing a lot of schools throughout his education, but he finally graduated from a private school. And he told me in that conversation he's never read a book from cover to cover. He can't. Ricky grew up, got into restaurant business, became vice president of Ryan's Steakhouse. Now I want you to think about that just for a minute. Here's a guy who couldn't read a book, yet he became the president of a multi-million-dollar company, a vice president of a multi-million-dollar company. Currently, he's with Dickey's Barbecue out in Texas, and his stores rank #1 in the company nationwide. As I thought about the conversation he and I had, and I thought about my grandmother's struggles, it dawned on me, as I went in my career of working with people with disabilities, she always would comment, "You like to help those folks, don't you?" Now I know why. She felt like she raised a young man with a disability, but it was dyslexia the entire time. I don't want any child in the state of Georgia to go through what my hero, my uncle, did, or any parent to struggle like my grandmother did. I urge your support for this bill. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.
We have a third amendment that just arrived. Mr. Secretary, will you read the amendment?
Amendment number 3 by Senator Heath of the 31st and others offers the following amendment. Amend the committee substitute to Senate Bill 48 by striking line 39 and replacing in every place in the bill other disorders with aphasia, dyscalasia, and dysgraphia. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 31st to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The amendment is just now being placed on the desk, but my intentions with the amendment was, and I brought the wrong bill here, so I certainly can't begin to explain the words, but on other disorders is defined in there on line 39 as the 3 conditions that are defined right above that. This simply takes the words other disorders wherever they occur in the bill and replaces it with those other 3 conditions so as not to give unfettered approval to the schools to test for any condition that they might decide to test for. Be glad to answer any questions if you have any. Thank you.
You have no questions, Senator. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th to close debate.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to speak in order to speak in opposition to the senator from the 31st Amendment. While I'm not sure that it makes any substantive change to the bill, we're talking about something that is, this is may go for other disorders, so I think it just complicates things a little too much at the last second. And so I believe when we're talking about things that they may screen for, I really don't have any concerns about keeping other disorders in there, and I believe that language is actually helpful to make sure that parents are realize that issues that their kids are struggling with are going to be heard too. So I ask you to vote no on Amendment 3.
Senator, you have a question.
I will yield.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Senator, will you yield?
Yes.
Isn't it true that if we actually delineate aphasia, dysphagia, and dysphagia, that if there were another disorder that's not specifically enumerated, then the testing would not be possible?
I still think it is possible. I believe that the state board would actually have the ability to do it. But I think we are encouraging them here. And I believe that's what we're doing. We're encouraging as other disorders other issues that face children as they arise, we still want to encourage them to make sure they're taking as best possible care for students who are in our school systems.
You further yield?
Yes.
I guess what I'm saying is, though, by making it more narrow, instead of saying other disorders, if I happen to be a child who has something that's not listed here, the 3 that are being proposed, then that would be a problem, wouldn't it?
I agree with you that I would prefer to keep it more broad. Even though other disorders is specifically defined, but I think that I think it's helpful to have that in there.
Thank you.
Do you yield?
I yield.
Chair recognizes the yield for questions.
I want to yield the well, I'm ready.
I see you working. Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I yield.
Senator, I'm in agreement with you that, especially not knowing exactly what impact throughout the bill this might have, it's probably better to hold off. But isn't it also true that it does have a Scrivener's error in it? I believe it should be dyscalculia, and it says dyscalculia. And so it would probably want to caution us that passing it with an inappropriate and probably not real disorder in this amendment would not be a good idea. Isn't that true?
That is true.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Does the senator yield?
I will yield.
Is it not true that other disorders is defined on line 39?
Other disorders is defined carefully in the bill.
Do you further yield?
I will.
Is it not true that others disorder means aphasia, dyscalculia, and dysgraphia?
That is correct, Senator.
So is it also not true that this amendment is egregious and pointless?
I would agree with you. I believe the senator is knowledgeable of what he speaks.
Thank you.
Senator, do you yield for one additional question?
I will yield for one additional question.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 31st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I will yield.
Senator, isn't it true that if what you said that the State Department of Education could test for all these things today, we wouldn't need this bill?
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't agree with that.
You did say that.
I believe they can, but I don't believe that this bill is not important.
Senator, do you believe that the State Department of Education should be able to test for any condition that they determine would be beneficial to someone?
I believe that they have authority under state and federal law to do that already. I do.
Thank you.
Senator, you have no additional questions.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would close with this. I thank you all for your consideration of this. Without the work of Senator Miller, we wouldn't be here. We would not have heard from hundreds of students who are not receiving the necessary attention that they need from their local school districts. And I would ask for your favorable consideration in passing this important legislation.
Thank you, Senator. We will now take up each individual amendment separately. We will start with Amendment 1. The question is on the adoption of Amendment 1. Is there objection to adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, floor amendment number 1 is adopted. Now we will take up Amendment number 2. The question is on the adoption of Amendment number 2. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is adopted. Now, Amendment number 3. The question is on the adoption of Amendment number 3. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? There is objection. All those in favor of the amendment from the senator from the 31st will vote yea, opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. State your inquiry.
Is it not true that this is for the amendment which I oppose?
It's for each and every senator to make their own determination. On the adoption of the amendment, the yeas are 6, the nays are 48, and the amendment is lost. The question is now on the adoption of the committee substitute as amended. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute as amended? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted as amended. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bills, the yeas are 55, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Chair would like to recognize the senator from the 9th.
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, would it be appropriate now that this bill is passed to recognize Audrey Jane on her birthday and have her stand so we can give her a hand for all her work on this bill as well? Happy birthday.
At this time, I'd like to recognize a special guest that we have with us here today. Our congressman from the 2nd Congressional District has stopped by for a minute, and I'd like to extend him an opportunity to address the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. President, and ladies and gentlemen of the Senate. It is indeed a privilege and an honor for me to be back what I really consider back home. I guess it was 27 years ago I was a member of this body. And I want you to know that where I am today, the experiences and what I learned here has served me well in Washington. Truly, this is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it, because today we have an opportunity to serve the people of this great state and the people of this country. I want to first take the opportunity to thank our governor, to thank this General Assembly, to thank our emergency management personnel and all of the folks, the charitable organizations that kicked in during the emergency, the disaster that we had back in the fall. We were devastated in southwest and middle Georgia, and people came together, FEMA, and folks from all over the country came to assist in the recovery. So I just want to take an opportunity to thank you and to thank the General Assembly for stepping up and helping out. In Washington, we have done a couple of things that I think are helpful and I want to share with you today. The first thing we did was we passed a farm bill. It was long overdue, but we got it done, and our farmers and our agricultural people will be able to have a 5-year blueprint so that Georgia can continue to be among the top agricultural states in the country. I have the honor in the 116th Congress of serving once again on the Appropriations Committee. But not only am I a member of that committee, but I have been designated to chair the Appropriations Subcommittee on Agriculture, Rural Development, and the Federal Drug Administration, along with serving on the subcommittee for military construction, Veterans Affairs, and Financial Services. So those 3 committees touch the real economic drivers of the state of Georgia, and I'm delighted that I'm able to serve the people of the state of Georgia along with you to see that we can improve that quality of life and keep it good. Not only did we do the Farm Bill, but we finally got past the shutdown politics and we passed the remaining appropriations bills, including the Agriculture Appropriations Bill, which adequately funds our Farm Service Agency, conservation, agricultural research, our nutrition programs, so that we are in a position to move forward. Unfortunately, in spite of the help that the General Assembly and the Governor have rendered regarding the disaster, we have been unable to complete the special appropriations, the supplemental appropriations bill for the disaster relief. We passed it last month in the House, $12 billion to address the disasters, the natural disasters that have occurred coast to coast. In Hawaii, we had the volcanic eruption over there that did a tremendous amount of damage to agriculture. We had wildfires in California and mudslides. And of course, we had hurricanes. And in 2017, we passed the WHIP program, which would give relief to farmers and agriculture personnel in rural communities that were impacted by several hurricanes. And our former colleague, your former colleague, I should say, Austin Scott, and myself were able to add $3 billion to the House $12 billion appropriations bill in order to address that relief that these communities all across our country and in the territories have experienced. Unfortunately, the shutdown politics got in the way of it. It was not added to that consolidated appropriations bill last week, but we hope and we will be doing our dead level best to make sure that our farmers will be able to get the relief they need because they need it, and our rural communities need it. They need it soon. It will be too late if we don't get it done in the next few weeks. So hopefully within the next couple of weeks we'll get that done, but please know that we are there fighting for our state and fighting for our citizens who were so devastated by Hurricane Michael last fall. Finally, let me just say that we are here for a limited period of time. We have a platform, we have this stage. God has blessed us with the opportunity to serve. And while we have this opportunity, we should do our best to do right by this generation and generations yet to come. I close with one of my favorite poems, God's Minute. I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Forced upon me, can't refuse it, didn't seek it, didn't choose it. I must suffer if I lose it, give account if I abuse it. Just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it. Let's use our minute, God's minute, to make a difference for the people of Georgia and for the people of this country. God bless you and God keep you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right, what are we moving on to? Senate Bill 55. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 55?
Senate Bill 55 by Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd. A bill will be titled Enactment, Article 3 of Chapter 2 of Title 47 of the OCGA, relating to employee and employer contributions and creation of funds for contributions, benefits, and administrative expenses, so as to revise the method and manner by which a member of the Employees Retirement System of Georgia may purchase an annuity and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 52nd to speak to Senate Bill 55.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill was requested by a department, the Employee Retirement System, ERS, and in fact was passed out by the Senate last year and passed out by the Retirement Committee in the House, but didn't make it through final passage. It requests that employees that are in the ERS system can take their funds and get an annuity, where some of them would prefer to have a guaranteed lifetime payment, and It simply gives them an option. It's permissible, but certainly not required. And you also see a yellow sheet on the back of it from the state auditor that certifies that this is a non-fiscal bill that will have no impact on the state either way. And if there are no questions, I'll yield the well.
You have no questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 48th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to be excused from voting on Senate Bill 55 pursuant to Senate Rule 5-1.8D, as in dog.
Without objection, the senator is excused from the vote. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass? The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50, the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 75?
Senate Bill 75 by Senator Black of the 8th and others, a bill we titled enactment Article 2 of Chapter 50 of Title 43 of the OCGA relating to the State Board of Veterinary Medicine, so as to provide for a professional health program for impaired veterinarians, to provide for definitions, to provide for confidentiality of certain records, to provide for costs and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senate Committee on Agriculture and Consumer Affairs offers the following substitute to Senate Bill 75, bill we titled enactment Article 2, Chapter 50, Title 43 of the OCGA, relating to the State Board of Veterinary Medicine, so as to provide for a professional health program for impaired veterinarians, to provide for definitions, to provide for confidentiality of certain records, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 8th to speak to Senate Bill 75.
Thank you, Mr. President. Won't be long because I don't want to keep folks from lunch. But this is a little bill that was brought to me at the request of the veterinarians. This allows the veterinary board to establish an entity to deal with veterinarians that become impaired either through some handicap, physical or mentally, or through some addictions. It allows them to contract with the outfit to deal with these people and try to save a professional career. This is modeled after something that the medical doctors has established through the composite board. It's been very effective there. I ask for your favorable considerations. If there's no questions, I yield the will.
Senator, you have no questions. The question is on the adoption of the committee substitute. Is there objection to the adoption of the committee substitute? Hearing none, the committee substitute is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the bill? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass by substitute? The question is on the passage of the bill by substitute. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 54, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed by substitute. Mr. Secretary, will you read Senate Bill 79?
Senate Bill 79 by Senator Gooch of the 51st and others. The bill will be titled an act to amend Code Section 32675 of the OCGA relating to restrictions on outdoor advertising authorized by Code Sections 32672 and 32673 and multiple message signs on the interstate system, primary highways, and other highways so as to remove references to the term mechanical in relation to multiple message signs and for other purposes. Amendment 1 by Senator Hinson of the 41st offers the following amendment to Senate Bill 75 by inserting after line 21, Code Section 32671 is amended by revising subsection 11.1 as follows. 11.1, multiple message sign means a sign, display, or device which changes the meaning or copy on the sign electronically. Amendment 2 by Senator Hinson of the 41st and others offers the following amendment to Senate Bill 79 by inserting after line 71, Code Section 32-6-71 is amended by revising subsection 11.1 as follows. 11.1, multiple message sign means a sign, display, or device which changes the message or copy on the sign electronically or by moving or rotation of panels or slats. Mr. President, that concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 51st to speak to Senate Bill 79.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, SB 79 is a simple cleanup bill. It just redefines the word multi-messaging on billboards. It would strike the word mechanical and clarify two places there on the bill. You can see where we struck the word mechanical in two places. There will be an amendment coming up. Amendment number 2, we do support it. It will replace amendment number 1. Mr. President, I'll yield for any questions.
You have a question? Actually, you do not have any questions.
Thank you.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st to speak to his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. My amendment's just a clarifying amendment that I took to the author. I've got two amendments. One that just has my name on it, another one that has mine and the author of the bill. And what we want to do is make sure that by striking the word mechanical, that we're really including these LED type signs. In another definition of code section 32671, the definition of a multiple message signs in its definition says by movement or rotation of panels and slats. So what we're just trying to do is make sure that definition is broad enough to include multiple methods, whether it's slats or LED. The author of the bill agrees the Second Amendment, so I'll withdraw Amendment 1. I'm open to any questions you may have. Not, I think we're trying to obtain the same goal. Thank you.
You have no questions. Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st.
I move to withdraw Amendment 1.
Is there objection? Hearing none, the amendment is removed. Do any other senators wish to speak to Amendment number 2? The question is on the adoption of Amendment number 2. Is there objection to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing none, the floor amendment is adopted. Does any other senator wish to speak to the bill, for or against? The chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none, and the report of the committee is agreed to. Shall the main question be now put? Are there any objections? The chair hears none, and the main question is ordered. Shall this bill now pass as amended? The question is on the passage of the bill as amended. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 52, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed as amended. Chair would like to recognize our distinguished majority leader.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 o'clock on Thursday, February 21st.
The secretary will read the announcements.
Rules will meet upon adjournment at 4:50 of the Capitol. Public safety will meet at 1 p.m. in Mez 1. Education and youth will meet at 2 p.m. in 307 of the CLB. State institutions and property will meet at 2 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Veterans, military, and homeland security will meet at 2 p.m. in 310 of the CLB. Economic development and tourism will meet in Mez 1 at 3 p.m. Health and human services will meet at 3 p.m. in 450 of the Capitol. Judiciary will meet at 4 p.m. in 307 of the CLB. And retirement will meet at 4 p.m. in 125 of the Capitol. That concludes the order.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th for an announcement.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I would like to call your attention to the fact that the Georgia Installment Lenders Association has rescheduled their reception that was postponed because of weather. It will be this evening at the Commerce Club at 6 p.m. I know that some of you will not be able to be there, but I would like to inform you that they will have a table in the rotunda this afternoon from 1 to 5 p.m. So I hope that you'll have opportunity to go by and visit with them. Again, that's the Georgia Installment Lenders Association.
Thank you, Senator. The Majority Leader has moved that the Senate stand adjourned until 10 a.m. on Thursday, February 21st, 2019. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. The ayes clearly have it. We stand adjourned.